This episode is brought to you by Springbrook Autism Behavioral Health. Springbrook provides comprehensive, evidence-based care for children and adolescents with autism and other developmental disabilities. With residential services, educational programming, and clinical support all in one place, Springbrook focuses on helping each individual build skills, increase independence, and reach their full potential. To learn more about their program and how they're supporting families every day, visit their website at springbrookbehavioral.com. Hey guys, and welcome back to All Abilities No Filter. I'm Jake Edgar, your host, and in today's episode, our discussion I feel like is something that a lot of people can relate to, resonate with, whether you're a parent, a caretaker, or maybe this is something that affects you individually. But in today's episode, I was able to sit down with Jessica Setnick, and she is known by eating disorder professionals worldwide for bringing a new vision of eating disorder care to the field. Through her training workshops, Eating Disorders Boot Camp, and hundreds of conference and community presentations, Jessica has spread her message to thousands of healthcare professionals, educators, college students, and others, combining authenticity, 2 decades of experience, and her unique ability to translate complicated topics into practical tools. Jessica connects with audience on a deep level, whether from a podium or across the cyberspace. But you guys sit back, relax, and welcome to the conversation. Thanks, guys. All right, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today and coming in for our conversation. How are you doing today?
Oh, great. I'm delighted to be here. Waiting is the hardest part for me. So now that we're here, I'm in. I'm excited.
Same. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while because it's one that I know our listeners have always had questions about. I've had questions about, and it's one that's been on the schedule that I've been looking forward to. But, well, for our listeners, if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving us telling us about yourself, about your background, and kind of like what's brought you here today, that would be awesome.
I'm having allergies. Sorry
It is.
about that. I'm not crying. Is there
It's I've already popped, I think, 3 or 4 Claritin today, so I'm right there with you.
So, my origin story, I live in Dallas. I'm trained as a registered dietitian for children with eating disorders. I don't see patients anymore. I now educate professionals on how to do a better job helping kids, teens, adults with eating issues. And I'm an advocate for people who are having trouble getting their eating disorder care covered by insurance. So I have my hand in a lot of pots lately. And one of the main things that I try to do is help people figure out what's going on with their eating, because it's not as easy to change our eating as we sometimes want it to be or think it should be, or to change other people's eating. And so there's so much involved. We've sort of been trained to think of food as molecules and devoid of emotion. And the truth is, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of intergenerational messages, a lot of cultural stuff, a lot of systemic stuff that all flows into our experience of eating. And so helping people see all the big impacts rather than feeling like I should just wake up in the morning and make the right decisions.
Talking as a huge foodie, my wife, she knows how to get through to me, and it's through food, and I love all food. So eating disorders have always been something very foreign to me because and a lot of people, it's where people have that can be a pretty just a pretty negative relationship towards food. It's very hard for me to relate to people like that and fully understand it, which honestly, I'm afraid that I probably could come off pretty insincere and not understanding. But in your professional opinion, or with everything you've worked with, what is kind of your definition of an eating disorder? Because I know we have picky eaters, but then we have disorders that can lead to pretty significant health issues. But in general, when you're working with patients, children, adults, or whoever, what would you kind of define an eating disorder as?
So the short answer is I wouldn't. I don't use that terminology anymore because eating disorder is really a medical or mental health diagnosis. They're very defined. And the definitions in the DSM of eating disorders by the American Psychiatric Association, to me, are not very good definitions. And what happens operationally for us humans is when we hear eating disorder, we think of this very specific vision in our mind, or avatar or persona of what we think an eating disorder is, what an eating disorder looks like, who an eating disorder affects. And the truth is, anyone who eats can have eating problems. So I actually prefer the term dysfunctional eating behavior, disruptive eating behavior, or problem eating behavior, because I feel like that opens the door. Instead of trying to smush people into boxes based on their one problem eating behavior, we kind of open our minds to the fact that anyone who eats can have an issue with eating. So let's use that term from here on out, whether it's picky eating, whether it's under eating, whether it's overeating, whether it's compensatory behaviors. We'll just call that problem eating behavior, or disruptive eating behavior, or dysfunctional eating behavior, if that's okay with you.
I completely understand, because I'll be honest, it's when I hear that term as someone not very educated in this field or anything, and I think from the majority of people, your mind kind of goes to two things, either, and the ones you hear all the time, bulimia, anorexic, and that's the only thing you think of. So when you hear that, you're thinking someone's got super effective issues going on. So I'm so glad you said that, because I'm learning very slowly that it can mean so many different things, and people can be dealing with so many different avenues of it, which are so great. And as our audience knows, what who I work with, and the majority of our listeners work with and deal with, are individuals on the spectrum, neurodivergent, or really any type of intellectual or even physical disability is what we center around. And I love that you said it just a second ago. And what we deal with on a daily basis is, like you said, the picky eaters, where these individuals have such sensory issues going on with texture, also just with consistency, with having anxiety about trying new things, or being afraid of a certain color of a food, or
Yes.
just
And
anything.
so there's another thing. I mean, we are seriously trying to move away from the term picky eaters, maybe to something that sounds a little less judgy, like selective eaters. But I
Yes.
actually just prefer eating preferences, because I
Yes.
think that takes the judgment out of it. We're all allowed to have eating preferences. And so the question is, can you stay nourished within your eating
Mm.
preferences? Or is it important that you expand your scope, expand your preferences, start experimenting with things that are outside your preferences to see if we can widen your acceptable foods to the point where you can be better nourished?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that too, because when we work with younger people on the spectrum and things like that, and they refuse to eat anything but certain things, people that are not very experienced working with this individual automatically assume, okay, you're just trying to be difficult. You don't want to try anything. You're choosing to be annoying, when it literally is, they found what they like, but with the way their brains are so wired, that they love that consistency. They love staying in a lane a lot of the time. I worked with a young girl the other week, and she is that chicken fingers. She's so funny, because she chicken fingers, French fries, but then sushi. Loves sushi. It's just wild. And she's very communicative. She'll talk to me what's going on, communicates really well. And it was so interesting listening to her, because she was able to tell me why she sticks to those things, but she went over the textures of how things feel in her mouth, but also she doesn't like things that she thinks could be a certain temperature, or green. And she got very frustrated, because she thinks people think I hate vegetables and I don't want it, but it's just green. It's, for some reason, in her mind, she associates green with like vomit, or just other green things that are nasty. In her mind, she can't get away from that thing. So do you have experience where those such vast amount of external factors, other than I don't like it, so I'm not trying it, and I just want to be difficult, which is hardly the
Yeah,
the
but except
thing.
I don't think it's all external factors. A lot of it is internal,
Hmm.
but there's also the external factors that make it worse. I'll say it that way, that
Yep.
as the adults around children, we can't necessarily make someone eat something they don't want, and we shouldn't. We shouldn't be putting things inside people's bodies that they don't want. We sometimes occasionally have to do that for medical reasons, but in general, we're trying to respect bodily autonomy. And the same thing should be true about food. And unfortunately, pressure that we sometimes put on kids actually makes things worse. And I can use myself as an example. I can use my nephew as an example. The other day, we went out to dinner at a Mexican restaurant, and he is 15. He ordered salmon tacos, which I've seen on the menu or maybe not even noticed, but definitely no one I've been with has ever ordered them. He ordered the salmon tacos with no coleslaw. They came with green rice. He made his taco with a tortilla, salmon, and rice, and he ate it and he liked it, and then he took a picture of it. And I said, "What's going on over here?" And he said, "Well, I'm taking a picture to send to my mom because, and I do know, I've been labeled as a picky eater in my family, and so I never try anything new when they're around because I feel too much pressure. And so I know my mom will be proud that I tried something new and I liked it." I mean, I am me, right? I take myself wherever I go. I do not just say these things to people, to patients and clients, and then not do them in my real life. This child has learned that he can order what he wants off the menu. He can eat it or not eat it, and no one's going to hassle him. No one's going to give him a hard time. If he doesn't eat it, believe me, we'll take it home and my husband will eat it the next day. It's just not a stressor, right? There's no like, "Are you sure you're going to eat that? Salmon tacos? Really? You don't like salmon, or whatever." There was just no pressure. And so my point is, you can't make a 15-year-old eat salmon tacos, but you for sure can make an environment where he's not going to reach out and try salmon tacos. So I think, we overestimate the impact we can have positively, and we underestimate the impact we can have negatively.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. Setting up that environment where they feel not pressured to what they choose to eat is going to affect the people around them, or what they are or not allowed to consume. It really does. It opens them up to make their own decisions and
And I
choices.
think about it like bungee jumping. Like if food is not scary to you, think of something that is scary to you. Bungee jumping. Let's just say you have sort of half-heartedly agreed to go bungee jumping. You're not sure you want to do it, but you're like, "Okay, I feel the peer pressure. I'm going to do it." You're standing on top of a bridge. You've got something attached to your ankles, and you think, "Okay, maybe I can do this." And then all of a sudden, everyone around you starts telling you what a wuss you are for not jumping. And like, "Oh my gosh, it's so not a big deal. Why can't you jump?" Like, that is not going to help you jump. You may jump, but you may feel horrible while you're doing it. You may throw up. Like, who knows? It's so stressful. What would be less stressful? What would help you jump better is people saying, "Yeah, it's hard. It is hard to bungee jump. Oh, especially this is your first time. Oh my gosh, the first time is super hard." You know what? You can undo your ankle straps and you can leave if that's what you want to. We hope you don't, because we're here for you and there's someone down there to cheer for you if you do it. But you know what? We like you. That's not going to change whether you bungee jump or not. That would be actually a safer position to emotionally to bungee jump when people are not pressuring you. And yet we do the opposite with food. If you eat this, if you try one bite, I'll give you $1, or all kinds of things that, that really increase that anxiety threshold.
Yeah, it is validation. It's when we invalidate people's feelings, or even towards food, where it is, like I said at the beginning, it's very difficult for me to empathize with people that have that view on food where it does affect them. So if I have my nieces or nephews over and they tell me they don't want to eat something, it's very difficult for me to do that. "You're going to sit here till you eat it." And I have to really pull myself back a lot of the time, because I'm not validating their feelings towards something. Because like you kind of said, it's to them, not eating or having to eat this certain food is a big deal. And I look at them and go, "It's not a big deal. Just try it. It's not going to kill you." It's pretty much telling them, "I don't care how you feel about this. You got to do it." And
Well, and
it's
if it was
hard.
me, I would ask you, what experiences did you have growing up that sort of led you to that way of thinking? Because I never want to force anyone to eat anything, because I'm the person that if you change the formulation of your chocolate milk, I can tell the difference.
Yep.
And so I am very sensitive to changes in texture, changes in taste, those kind of things. And I don't want anyone to feel that anxiety around me that I felt at times. And I mean, I can tell you, the minute that the cereal gets too soggy. Like there is a transition from when I can eat it because it's crunchy, and then it just goes over like one more second and it's too mushy for me to eat. And so I feel very strongly that these divisions or whatever it is that we can't see, if someone's experiencing that, that's important. But I have this mindset of you're not allowed to waste food. And so what I've tried to do is not put myself in a situation where I am pushing a child to eat more because of my issue with wasting food. So I have triplets in my life that are 4.5 years old. It is very unpredictable how much or what they will eat. So I don't serve them a plate with all the things. I serve them a plate with the thing that I know they're going to eat, which is the noodles, and then one piece of chicken and one piece of broccoli. And if they eat it and they like it and they want more, there's more. It's right there on the table. But I don't have an expectation of how much they're going to eat. And therefore, if they don't eat it, I have to throw it away. So that's where I feel like we as the adults have to really manage our expectations to set a child up to not disappoint our expectations. Like we don't realize how much we're setting them up sort of to disappoint us, and then we're the ones that get disappointed and put pressure on them. And we haven't even touched on the idea of food as love. Like I prepared this food for you. I took time out of my day. If you don't eat it, I'm taking that personally.
So I cook. I'm like, that's kind of exactly what you said. When I cook for my wife or for my family, that is my way of saying, hey, I thought about what you guys might like. And it does. When they say they don't like something or they don't eat a lot of it, internally, it's not a great feeling. But I've gotten better at, before I start cooking, it is getting their opinions on what would you like, really taking in consideration of what they're going to think about when they see the plate of food, which has helped a lot. My wife, she is I wouldn't call her someone with a lot of food preferences, but she does have those, can't eat cold food, can't eat with mushy textures and things like that. So that's kind of helped us. And I've had to adapt to things a bit, but it's helped. When you're working with people, and in our background, working with parents, a lot of the time their concerns are, if I don't push my child to eat things, they're never going to broaden their horizons. They're never going to try new food. Or their main concern is, well, what's going to happen when they're in the environment where they don't have the food they like at school, or if they go on a field trip. Are there any techniques, strategies, or experiences that you could share that they could implement, or just things to think about when working with their child that could be on the spectrum, when their main goal is for them to kind of broaden the horizons?
Yeah. And I promise to answer your question, but can I go back a little bit and ask
Absolutely.
you, why do you say your wife doesn't have a lot of food preferences? Because when you said she doesn't eat cold food and she doesn't eat mushy food, I think of those as food preferences.
They are. And when I'm kind of using her own words, because she'll say there's not many things at all I do not like. She doesn't want to eat a salad because of the temperature of the food. And she doesn't like eating like sandwiches because of the temperature of the food. And then she doesn't like to eat things like yogurt or oatmeal because of just that mushy texture. So thinking back, she does have food preferences. I would just say either misspoke or saying that she doesn't have a lot of things that I have to consider when making dinner.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
So in other words, this is so crucial right here,
Mm-hmm.
is she has changed the language around her food so that it's not an issue of division. Because there could be another husband and another wife in another town where the wife has the exact same food preferences as your wife, which I would consider pretty significant. No cold food, no mushy food. That's a lot of foods that she does not prefer to eat. And a husband who's a foodie and loves to cook. And they are on the verge of divorce because he is taking it personally.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you're too picky. He says, I don't understand why you can't just grow up and just eat what's put in front of you, right? So the fact that she has preferences, you love to cook, and yet you have a pleasant mealtime relationship is proof to me that you've done the emotional work to not take it personally and to coexist and to be appreciative of each other's neurodivergence or whatever you want to call it, your own qualities, your characteristics. And that's what our goal is with kids. So when you ask me the question of, if I don't force my kid to eat, then how will they function in a world that's not going to accommodate them? I would say it's the exact same thing. You are trying to give them a functional relationship with food where they are not ashamed to state their food preferences. Exactly what you and your wife do. She can state her food preferences, you can accept her food preferences, and you don't think less of her as a person. You aren't punitive with her, you aren't shaming her, because that is where you raise a child who can take care of themselves in the outside world. Whether it is that they say, oh, you know what? I don't like pasta with sauce. Could you make me some pasta with no sauce? I taught my kids, or very picky, selective, and I taught them at a very young age. If there is pasta anywhere on that menu with any kind of sauce on it, then you can ask for plain pasta with butter and Parmesan, and they can make that for you. I want those kids to have the confidence to know how to ask for what they need. And if they were told we don't have that, the pasta already comes with the sauce, we can't make it, they can look at that menu and see if there's something else they could eat. I'm raising those kids to have granola bars in their backpack that they do like, so that they don't have to panic if there's nothing on that menu that they want to eat. So teaching your child the skills is just as important as exposing them to food. And I'd like to add that just because your child doesn't eat a food, remember that exposing them to food counts when it is watching you eat the food, having the food on the table but not on their plate, having experience working on food in the kitchen with you at an age-appropriate level, whether they're old enough to cut with a plastic knife or they can stir with a whisk, whatever it is that's age-appropriate for them, they are encountering that food, and that counts as food exposure. And so over time, a certain number of exposures may result in that food actually going in the mouth. It may not. But the idea is, if we can help kids feel safe around food, they don't have to make their list of preferred foods smaller and smaller and smaller every time we give them a bad experience by forcing them to eat a certain food.
Yeah, and I completely see what you're saying, because it's so good to hear it from somebody that really knows what they're talking about. Because we have a few kids that I work with on a daily basis, and to say they're selective eaters is an understatement. It is very much wired in their brains what they like, and they want to stick to it. And they like that consistency and things like that. And the the dietitians we have that work with the kids are great, because I feel like they do take kind of the approach you're describing there, where I've never really seen them ever tell them, this is what you're trying today. If you don't eat this, you're going hungry. It's never been that. They always have their options of different things. And one thing I thought was super cool is one of our kids is chicken nuggets, which I think is one of our big things. And very much a brand, I think it was Tyson's brand that he really liked, but slowly introducing, it's still chicken nuggets, but it's I think she was using different brands of types of chicken nuggets. I think she brought in Dino nuggets. And then the other week, I believe she got them to try grilled nuggets, and they actually were trying it. And it's kind of like you were saying, is never once did they say, if you don't eat this, you don't get to eat anything. The brand they liked, they knew as soon as they asked for it, they were going to get it. And they was going to be fine. But they did slowly introduce things to them. And I think you're so right. It's just watching them, it was like I didn't see any pressure on these kids. It wasn't like they were just kept, and I don't think they even asked for that preferred thing one time. I think once our dietitian saw that they were eating it, maybe a little bit of hesitancy or starting to slow down, they offered it, and then they got it there. Building that environment of no stress, we're going on your pace. It was amazing, because I've also been in public schools where I've worked, and it was kind of the opposite. It was left to the cafeteria workers to kind of dictate things, and kids would ask, and it was I guess you're going to go hungry at this point. And then we would see escalations in behaviors, because now they're hungry, because now you're dealing with an upset, hungry, neurodivergent, autistic child. So that's really cool, because it is, now that I'm kind of being able to see both sides, it's that low stress, low pressure environment that had such more of an impact than that direct, well, you're going to go hungry if you don't eat it.
And I do think that there's sort of this very binary point of view of where You either just leave kids to just eat whatever they eat in the end, or you force kids to eat instead of this middle ground where there are hundreds, if not thousands, of eating experiences that a kid will go through. And there's no reason not to introduce new things. But as you said, not in a stressful environment. You can use curiosity. I noticed that there was a different brand of chicken nuggets at the store. And so I brought them to see what they would be like. So I cooked up some of both. I'm curious, what do you notice is different? I noticed that the shape is a little bit different. This one kind of looks like a dinosaur. I noticed that the coloring is a little bit different, right? I wonder if they taste different. Let's take a bite of each one and see if we think they taste different. I'm going to do it too, right? That kind of curiosity is what you're trying to role model for kids if they go to a different country. That's interesting. I have soup right here that has I don't know, a snake egg in it. I don't know. That's kind of, I don't even know if anybody eats that. A grasshopper in it, like I wonder what that's going to be like. I'm not sure I want to eat a grasshopper, but that exposure to what is it like to have the freedom to explore, and what is it like to have the freedom to try something new and say, I didn't like it, and have that be respected. Yep. Right? So curiosity and autonomy, and thinking of it as an experiment. So not in terms of this is your meal, and if you don't eat it, you don't get it. But what would it be like at a non-meal time to say, look, I found these chicken nuggets and I thought we could do an experiment and see what the difference is. I'm going to cook up a couple of these and a couple of these and we can see. And there's no stress over if I don't eat this, I won't get nourished, because it's not even a mealtime. It's a science experiment.
That's so cool. We and we also had one where it is their big one was spaghetti, but only spaghetti. No bow tie noodles, no macaroni noodles, things like that. And one of our I think it was one of our speech pathologists actually went out and bought a different type of pasta, and she approached it as, hey, I was thinking about you and how much you love pasta, and I saw this really cool I think it was bow tie or something, and they brought it in and we thought you would love it. And you could tell they were hesitant about it, but they were like, if you don't want to, that's fine. But you could tell this was an older child that we were working with, but the fact that they made it all about them, it was just like, thought about this with you, and you want to come try it. It's just me and you going to have our own lunch. And I know they did try, hated it, absolutely hated it. Went right back to the spaghetti. It was so funny, but first time we ever saw this person try something new eating, but you could tell it was because they felt special. It was like something just for them that they're going to try. And it was really
you're
cool.
Talking to a person who likes angel hair and doesn't like spaghetti. Okay. And I know there are people who will say that is the same thing. And I will tell you, they are not the same thing. Right. So, right. It's just, you don't even, sometimes you can't explain it. And we expect kids to say, we say, well, why don't you like it? You liked it yesterday. Well, they don't know. Yep. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like what you're describing, where you take something that a child likes and go to something that is so similar, but a little bit different, is called food chaining. And the fact that that child could try a bow tie pasta and say, oh, I didn't like it. Now, if it was me, next time I'd come in with those wagon wheels, and I'd come in with some spirals, and I'd be like, let's do a taste. I bought 5 different kinds of pasta, and I cooked up a tiny amount of each one. And I think this will be fun. I'm going to close my eyes and you give me one of those types of pasta, and I'm going to see if I can tell which one it is with my eyes closed, right? That's the kind of experience we want kids to have with food, but it takes a lot of time. We are all over busy. We are all over committed. If you're driving to soccer practice and giving a snack in the car, nobody has time to make 3 wagon wheels and 3 bow ties and compare and contrast. So sometimes we do have to set aside time specifically for this, but at the same time as it's good for our kids, it's good for us too, because we're sort of reparenting ourselves in the sense of putting less pressure on ourselves. If your job as a parent is to feed, clothe, and shelter your kid, and one of those is not going well, you are not feeling good about yourself as a parent. And so to be able to slow the process down and say, actually, my kid is nourished. I've seen malnourished kids. This is not a malnourished kid. And take that stress off you as a parent of thinking, oh my gosh, if my kid only eats one kind of pasta, everyone's going to judge me and think I'm a terrible parent. We got to take that stress off of ourselves. So having a selective eater in your child is stressful for you as a parent too. So we need to de-stress the parenting aspect of parenting a child with food preferences, and we need to be more accepting of that. And the beauty is, over time, either a child will add to their food preferences or not, but without our pressure, they at least won't decrease. We can actually make it so a selective kid eats fewer things than they did when we started. And so we're actually trying to think of staying the same as a plus. And if they also add anything else, that's like a mega plus.
Absolutely. We had one thing I want to ask you about, and it's more of a drastic type situation, because we have had, and parents have had children that are on the spectrum, and parents, that when they're raising kids like that and they're looking for as many triggers to avoid or anything that will cause an escalation or crisis, they want to avoid it. And I've worked with parents where food was a major one. When they got the food that they liked, they were great. Baseline behaviors, avoided crisis. Any change in their diet caused huge outbursts and explosive behavior. So they left it to, okay, well, you like these foods that are unhealthy, high caloric foods, but they keep you happy. And as your mom and dad, I want to see you happy. I don't want to see you upset. So for years, they've allowed them to eat these high caloric, very unhealthy foods, which has caused the child to be a certain age, but be extremely overweight. Doctors have told them that they're on the route for severe health issues. We have to change that diet. And they feel so forced to change it quickly. We got to get, and then and of course, that's going to lead to such explosive behaviors from that. What do you tell parents that they've been told by a medical professional that your child is at severe risk? They have got to change that diet, but that you don't want to, but you know your child better than anybody. You know, if I force them to do this quickly, it's going to cause more issues. They got to do it the correct way.
My advice is to say to that doctor, that's not going to happen. We need to treat my child for whatever the condition is. If it's high cholesterol, if it's hypertension, whatever the condition is, we need to treat my child for it, because it is unrealistic to expect them to lose weight. That is outside of their ability. If this child was skinny and had these same conditions, how would you treat them? That's what we need to do. And you may even need a different doctor who understands your child's condition better. I have to take issue with the words unhealthy. I'm not sure that any food in isolation that I would consider that unhealthy. As dietitians, we think of it like a 2-week period. So that would be maybe a whole other conversation. But in terms of a doctor giving nutrition or weight loss advice, I don't want to lump every doctor into this category, but I will say that my main message to doctors is, if you didn't do a nutrition assessment, you shouldn't be giving nutrition advice. See a dietitian, see if there's any recommendations. Kids do not need as much variety in their food as we imagine they do. Think about times past where you couldn't get cherries in the middle of winter because you couldn't get them from those South American countries or whatever the case may be. It's okay to have priorities. And if your priority is to have a kid who is happy, they may also be overweight. And other people are going to hear me say that, and they're going to be like, that is not okay. And I'm here to say, if these are your choices, if you could pick anything in the world, maybe you'd pick for your child not to be in this situation. But if this is a situation you're in, what are the best of all your possible options? And if your possible options are to have a miserable home environment where nobody can get any peace, or a kid who has to be treated for hypertension because the food that they really like is, or prefer, or only will eat is high in sodium and it's causing problems, thank God that you live in this era where we have medication for that rather than a different era. These are not easy decisions to make, but they should be made with a kind and compassionate doctor who understands the situation, as opposed to a weight phobic or weight biased doctor who can only see weight and can't see the child themselves.
I know I worked with on an IEP with a parent, and they were very concerned about the foods they were eating. And because, I mean, I'll be honest, their child was, I think he was 7 years old. And I mean, he was pushing 180 pounds and very much had to be almost pushed around in a chair throughout most of his school day because he would become so exhausted and heavy breathing and things like that. And parents, they blamed themselves for it because he did, the majority of the foods he ate were high in fats, fast food, things like that, because they did make him happy. And they just, when they were speaking to me or the IEP team, but they also brought in dietitians too, because they wanted the dietitian to talk to the IEP team, but also figure out what they can implement in the cafeteria, or if the parents sent specific foods with them and making sure they were able to keep it refrigerated or whatever it is. But they tried to come up with the plan on what to do if the child refused the food and requested the high calorie typical food that he typically ate, because they blood pressure, I know, was through the roof for us.
Here's the thing. I don't know all the details, but a 7-year-old who weighs 180 pounds, it's hard for me to believe that that person is eating a normal amount of food. Even the most high calorie, whatever you might call high calorie unhealthy food, there is a volume issue there, right? There is an amount of food that is being consumed. And so the question is, what is that child replacing with food? Do they need more social connection? Do they need more whatever it is? I don't know. But affection, screen time, whatever it is, alone time, there's something that's being replaced with food, and food is filling a need that is not a physical fueling need. And that's what I would be looking at rather than focusing on the weight. The other thing is there a situation here where this child has some kind of metabolic condition that is not being addressed? Does this child have Prader-Willi, which is a genetic illness? Like, what is going on? And that's why I feel like eating disorder dietitians, to me, are always the person you want to get involved, because we're the only one, not the only ones. We are often the first person that will look at the origin of this and try to go back in time. But that's what's so important, is when did this child diverge from their growth chart? What happened at that point? What are the parents trying to solve with food, right? Those to me are the questions we need to ask, rather than just saying this kid needs to lose weight, right? Do we need to find adaptive physical activities that this kid could possibly enjoy to be more active, right? How can we help with the shortness of breath? How can we help with the whatever it is, muscle weakness? How can we help with those things that would then help the child be more active, even if they're a bigger child, but help them be more active, right? So I feel like sometimes we as medical professionals are asking the wrong questions and not really looking at how did we get here, because to just restrict a child because they're overweight seems like a very cruel thing to do, because the child is not even aware in many cases that something is wrong. So we really have to look at it closely and balance what we're doing. I feel like just this one example of a 7-year-old who weighs more than twice as much of what the average 7-year-old is, something has gone wrong in that situation. And I don't know, I would just want a lot more information before I came up with a plan. And it would not just be a simple, let's lose weight plan.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because like my dad, he was very overweight, pre-diabetic, eventually developed diabetes. And he did go to several different physicians talking about changing things up. And then lo and behold, the person that solved it was my mom, because she observed my dad, loves my dad, and looked at it, and she looked at my dad and go, your biggest issue is you're bored. When he became bored, his biggest thing is he gets up, and because I relate, because I think I inherited from when I'm bored, without even thinking, I'll be at the pantry. And I think that was his. So she got all these activities. He started getting in, going out. He came out and hung out he has 4 boys. So hanging out with us more, we went to see him more, and filled his day up with things. He did have to get on certain medications to help with things, but it really was just, he didn't have the chance to go overeat because he had his days filled.
Well, it was both. It was both, right? It's an and situation.
Mm-hmm.
He needed the medicine and he needed more to do. Yep. I totally agree with you. I think we look sometimes at weight as just very, unifactorial. It's what you eat. or two things.
Yeah.
It's what you eat and how much you work out. And
Yeah.
there's just so much more to it. So I'm really
Yeah.
glad your dad had that insight thanks to your mom. I do think wives are really good at seeing things. I don't know if it's the way women are socialized or, if it could be anyone of any gender that sees it in someone else, because it's always easier to spot something in someone else versus in yourself. But that's fantastic that happened. Yeah.
She's not afraid to tell him how it is, and she just did. She's just like, you're just bored. You got to find stuff to do. And I can relate because I'm that way. And my wife has said it too. He's like, you're too much of a grazer. And it's because I'm not even hungry. I'm bored. And what
Yeah.
the easiest thing to fill my time
Great
is to
insight.
go grab something.
Great
Yeah.
insight. Yeah.
And it's,
My husband was diagnosed with high cholesterol, and his doctor called to tell him, and he was on speakerphone, and he said, you need to eat less meat and more fruit and vegetables. And I was so glad I was hearing this on speaker, because I just said, Dr. I won't say the name, Dr. V, this is his wife, and I'm a dietitian, and I can tell you right now, he eats about as little meat and as much fruits and vegetables as an American male. So if he needs medicine, put him on medicine, because his diet is not going to be able to improve. It really, really yanked my chain for this doctor to not ask him one word about what he eats and just automatically go straight to eat less meat and more fruit and vegetables. I think that's terrible advice. If you haven't asked someone what they're eating, then don't give them nutrition advice. It
No.
seems awfully simple.
Yeah. And a lot of the time, because a lot of times with the kids we work with, we deal with a lot of kids that do have trauma backgrounds and don't have the greatest history. So, but a lot of their joy comes from food. A lot of that piece of
That's
candy
true
that I
about a
never
lot of
had.
kids with intellectual and developmental
Yes.
disabilities. It's
'Cause
absolutely true.
they find such enjoyment from that. And so they seek it constantly. It's not like you said, they have in a lot of extent, I don't see a lot of food preferences. They just get so much joy from
Food is a
getting that
mood-altering
stuff.
chemical,
Yeah.
right? We don't think about it that way all the time, but think
Mhm.
about the last time you were hangry and you wanted a divorce, and then you had a sandwich and you felt better. Food is a mood-altering chemical. So the question is it appropriate for this child to be using food as a mood-altering chemical, or is there something else? Is there a video game that they like that is, mood altering in the same way for them? Or do they need a vitamin D supplement so that they can be less depressed? Like, we have to figure out what the origin
Yep.
is in order to figure out what the solution is. It can't just be taking food away from a child.
And we've had kids where they did get that enjoyment for food, but then they got into an environment where they're around the first person they've probably been around in years that looks at them and ask them how their day's going. Just seems super excited to see them. So they're getting that self-esteem boost and fulfillment from other places,
Yes,
and they're
that
starting to
food
ask
lift.
for it less.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it might be an SSRI. I mean, there's
Mhm.
lots of things that we need to look at. And I know nobody wants to put, they say, I don't want to drug kids. I don't want my kid to be a zombie. If your kid is a zombie, that is a side effect that needs to be reported. Nobody wants your kid to be a zombie. But if you're medicating a child with food, there may be a better option for that. And I understand that that's the easiest thing for kids to get their hands on. But the more we restrict people from food, the more people end up eating. So it can just be a sort of a negative cycle. And we want to try to get that cycle going positively instead of negatively. But again, I'm not there in every situation. So my advice can only be generic to the point that I haven't met anyone's child who's listening. And so that's why I would encourage you to, find your own professional to help that can really gather the information. But anyone who hasn't gone to the effort to gather the information, their advice, I saw this online and it was so funny. It said, remember that your home is a closed ecosystem. Outsiders will perish. And I thought that's so funny. Don't take advice from people who haven't lived in your home unless you've really felt like you were able to express to them what is really happening, because otherwise they're bringing their own external judgments onto a situation that they've never been in.
Opinions have to come from experience. And I tell a lot of the people we work with who we'll bring in contract physicians and things to help with certain programs we have, but they'll give these recommendations and opinions without ever meeting one of the kids we work with. So it's kind of like you got to build that experience to develop that opinion. And I think that's so important with a lot of things. But this has been, like I said, food and with working with children, it's sometimes delicate dynamic, and we want to make the kids happy at the same time, but we want them to progress in whatever opinions that we have. But a lot of times when we're working with our neurodivergent kids, we want them to be happy and safe and feel encouraged 99.9% of the time in the situation. And that one little percent, we can focus on a little bit of, let's try a little something new and kind of throwing that into them. But sometimes it takes us months to develop that relationship or that environment for them to feel safe in that. And I think it's so imperative that we go on their time and they don't feel like they have to do things.
Totally agree. And I think it's so funny that we are so imperfect as adults, and yet we expect our kids to just do it right the first time.
Just do it right then and there. Oh, yeah. I can remember how easy it was for me to do things on the first time I was told back in the day, but I got all these expectations for them. Well, Jessica, it's been so awesome speaking with you. Please, if you don't mind, sharing with our listeners where they can find information on you or the amazing resources you offer. If you could let our listeners know that would be amazing.
Sure. So my overarching umbrella website is jessicasetnick.com. And that's where you can find everything, my training for professionals, my Healing Your Inner Eater for parents, my how to invite me to give a talk at your event, etc. Everything's there. And then I do want to say I started working with a dietitian who wrote the book Food Positivity, and I haven't read it yet, but I love the message, so I'm going to delve into that next. And there's also Kids Thrive at Every Size by my colleague Jill Castle. So if you're looking for a book to read, I might recommend either one of those.
Amazing. And listeners, all of this information with Jessica's website and everything's going to be on our website, allabilitiesnofilter.com, with links. You can go check everything out, along with this episode and all past episodes, along with all of our amazing resources. Please go check those out. Leave comments, leave questions. I say it every time. That's how we're developing our episodes, is we're developing around questions you guys might have. So please comment and leave us anything that is affecting you in your day-to-day life, or just questions that you have. We're always wanting to help and provide the information we can. But thank you again so much for joining us today and taking the time to join in our conversation. And we can't wait for us to get around the table again for our next unfiltered conversation. Thanks, guys.